from the beginning, this is a very serious statement on a serious matter that is affecting a lot of people, and the Home Secretary will be heard with dignity. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With permission, I would like to make a statement about asylum processing at Malston and the incident in Dover yesterday. At around 11:20 a.m. on Sunday, police were called to Western Jetfoil. Officers established that 2 to 3 incendiary devices had been thrown at the Home Office premises. The suspect was identified, quickly located at a nearby petrol station, and confirmed dead. The Explosive Ordnance Disposal Unit attended to ensure there were no further threats. Kent Police are not currently treating this as a terrorist incident. Fortunately, there were only 2 minor injuries, but this is a shocking incident, and my thoughts are with all of those who are affected. Yeah. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have received regular updates from the police. While I understand the desire for answers, investigators must have the necessary space to work. I know the whole House will join me in paying tribute to everyone involved in the response, including the emergency services, military, border force, immigration enforcement, and the asylum intake unit. Madam Deputy Speaker, my priority remains the safety and the well-being of our teams and contractors, as well as the people in our care. Several hundred migrants were relocated to Malston yesterday to ensure their safety. Western Jetfoil is now fully operational again. I can also inform the House that my right honourable friend, the Minister for Immigration, visited the Malston site yesterday, and that I will visit shortly. My right honourable friend was reassured by the dedication of staff as they work to make this site safe and secure while suitable onward accommodation is found. As members will be aware, we need to meet our statutory duties around detention and also fulfil legal duties to provide accommodation for those who would otherwise be destitute. We also have a duty to the wider public to ensure that anyone who has entered our country illegally undergoes essential security checks and is not immediately free to wander around local communities with no fixed abode. When we face so many arrivals so quickly, it is practically impossible to procure over 1,000 beds at such short notice. Consequently, we have recently expanded the site and are working tirelessly to improve facilities. There are, of course, competing and heavy demands on housing stock, including for Ukrainians, Afghans, and social housing. We are negotiating with accommodation providers. I continue to look at all available options to overcome the challenges we face with supply. This is an urgent matter, Madam Deputy Speaker, which I will continue to oversee personally. I will now turn to our immigration and asylum system more widely. Let me be clear. This is a global migration crisis. We have seen an unprecedented number of attempts to illegally cross the channel in small boats. Some 40,000 people have crossed this year alone, more than double the number of arrivals by the same point last year. Not only is it unnecessary, because many have come from another safe country, it is lethally dangerous. We must stop it. It is vital that we dismantle the international crime gangs behind this phenomenon. Cooperation with the French has stopped over 29,000 illegal crossings since the start of the year, twice as many as last year, and destroyed over 1,000 boats. And our UK-France Joint Intelligence Cell has dismantled 55 organised crime groups since it was established in 2020. The National Crime Agency is at the forefront of this fight. Indeed, NCA officers recently joined what is believed to be the biggest ever international operation targeting smuggling networks. This year has seen a surge in the number of Albanian arrivals, Madam Deputy Speaker. many of them, I'm afraid to say, abusing our modern slavery laws. We are working to ensure Albanian cases are processed and individuals are removed as swiftly as possible, sometimes within days. The Rwanda Partnership will further disrupt the business model of the smuggling gangs and deter migrants from putting their lives at risk. I'm committed to making that partnership work. Labour want to cancel it. While we will continue to support the vulnerable via safe and legal routes, people coming here illegally from safe countries are not welcome and should not expect to stay. Where it is necessary to change the law, we will not hesitate to do so. I share the sentiment that has been expressed by members from across the House who want to see cases in the UK dealt with swiftly. Our asylum transformation programme will help bring down the backlog. It is already having an impact. A pilot in Leeds reduced interview times by over a third and has seen productivity almost double. We are also determined to address the wholly unacceptable situation, which has left taxpayers with a bill of £6.8 million a day for hotel accommodation. And let me set out to the House a situation that I found when I arrived as Home Secretary in September at the Home Office. I was appalled to learn that there were over 35,000 migrants staying in hotel accommodation around the country at exorbitant cost to the taxpayer. I instigated an urgent review.
Home Secretary.
I pushed officials to identify accommodation options which would be more cost-effective and delivered swiftly while meeting our legal obligations to migrants. I've held regular operational meetings with frontline officials and have been energetically seeking alternative sites. But I have to be honest, this takes time and there are many hurdles. I foresaw the concerns at Malston in September and deployed additional resource and personnel to deliver a rapid increase in emergency accommodation. To be clear, like the majority of the British people, I am very concerned about hotels, but I have never blocked their usage. Indeed, since I took over, 12,000 people have arrived, 9,500 people have been transferred out of Malston or Western Jetfoil, many of them into hotels. And I've never ignored legal advice. As a former Attorney General, I know the importance of taking legal advice into account. At every point, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have worked hard to find alternative accommodation to relieve the pressure at Malston. What I have refused to do is to prematurely release thousands of people into local communities without having anywhere for them to stay. That is not just the wrong thing to do, Madam Deputy Speaker, that would be the worst thing to do. For the local community in Kent, for the safety of those under our care, and for the integrity of our borders. The government is resolute in our determination to make illegal entry to the UK unviable. It is unnecessary, lethally dangerous, unfair on migrants who play by the rules, and unfair on the law-abiding, patriotic majority of British people. It is also ruinously expensive, and it makes all of us less safe. Madam Deputy Speaker, as Home Secretary, I have a plan to bring about the change that is so urgently needed to deliver an immigration system that works in the interests of the British people, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement? Yesterday's petrol bomb attack on the Western Jetfoil Centre was truly appalling. I'm sure the whole House will condemn it in the strongest possible terms. And I echo the Home Secretary's tribute to the emergency services and Border Force staff who responded. But I must ask her, can she tell me whether counter-terror police and counter-extremism units are involved in the investigation? It doesn't make sense for them not to be. Why are they not? Turning to the dreadful conditions at Malston, 4,000 people are now on a site designed to accommodate 1,600 people, with some families there for weeks. Conditions that have been described as inhumane, with risks of fire, disorder and infection. There are confirmed diphtheria outbreaks, reports of scabies and MRSA outbreaks, also reports of outbreaks of violence and untrained staff. She said nothing about what she was doing to address those immediate public health crises and also the issues for untrained staff. Behind these are deeper failures in the government's policies on asylum and channel crossings. Decision-making has collapsed. The Home Office took just 14,000 initial asylum decisions in the last 12 months, compared to 28,000 6 years ago. 96% of the small boat arrivals last year have still not had a decision, and initial decisions alone are taking more than 400 days on this Conservative government's watch. Can she confirm that the Nationalities Borders Bill and changes to immigration rules have in fact added further bureaucracy and delays, leading to tens of thousands more people waiting in asylum accommodation and more than £100 million extra on asylum accommodation bills because their policies are pushing up the use of hotels and the increase in delays? There's also been a total failure to prevent a huge proliferation of gangs in the Channel. Why has the Home Secretary refused our calls for a major new National Crime Agency unit with hundreds of additional specialist officers to work with Europol and others to crack down on the gangs, as well as the urgent work needed with France to get a proper agreement in place? And can she also confirm on the Rwanda plan that she has spent an extra £20 million on top of the £120 million already spent on a policy that she has herself described as failing and that her officials have described as unenforceable and with a high risk of fraud? And isn't it now time to drop this unethical and unworkable scheme and put the money into tackling the backlogs and tackling the criminal gangs instead? And let me ask her about her own decisions, which are there are very serious allegations now being reported that the Home Secretary was warned by officials and other ministers she was acting outside the law by failing to provide alternative accommodation. Can she confirm that she turned down contingency plans that she was offered that would have reduced overcrowding, as the reports say? There are also legal obligations, including under the 1999 Act and the 2018 regulations. Can she confirm she was advised repeatedly that she was breaking the law by failing to agree to these plans? One of these meetings on Malston was on the 19th of October. Can she confirm she refused these proposals on that date? It was the same day that she broke sections 2.3 and sections 1.4 of the Ministerial Code. So can she confirm, or can she tell us whether in fact she breached the Ministerial Code, which provides for ministers abiding by the law? Did she breach the Ministerial Code 3 times in a single day? And how is anyone supposed to have confidence in her as a Home Secretary with these serious issues? She referred in her statement to security checks. These are very important, but her statement is undermined by her own disregard for security. Her letter today makes clear that the incident over which she resigned was not a one-off, and contrary to her previous claims to have reported the breach rapidly as soon as she realised, she instead had to be challenged several times by one of her colleagues. She has also not answered the crucial questions about security breaches while she was Attorney General. Can she tell us whether she was involved in a leak to the Telegraph, reported in the Telegraph on the 21st of January, about information about Attorney General action on a case involving the security service? Has she sent any other government documents by WhatsApp, Telegram or other social media? And given that it's been less than a week since she was reappointed, and less than a fortnight since she was first forced to resign for breaching the Ministerial Code, and every day since her reappointment there have been more stories about possible security or Ministerial Code breaches, how is anybody supposed to have confidence in her, given the serious responsibilities of the Home Secretary to stand up for our national security, for security standards and for public safety? The Prime Minister promised that this would be a government of integrity, of professionalism and of accountability. Isn't the Home Secretary letting everyone down and failing on all of these counts?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. To pick up on some of the specific points that the Honourable Lady mentions, I'm not going to comment on any details relating to this specific case or the individual under consideration. But there has been clear work afoot with the NCA and all partners to try and tackle the problem of illegal migration. I'm very encouraged by the relationship that we have built with the French, and I'm grateful to the French authorities for their real commitment and work on tackling this problem. But it's absolutely clear that, as I made clear in my statement, that on no occasion did I block hotels or veto advice to procure extra and emergency accommodation. Actually, the data and the facts are that on my watch, since the 6th of September, over 30 new hotels were agreed, which would provide over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces, which will be brought into use. Since the start of October, over 13 new hotels will provide over 1,800 additional hotel bed spaces. So, and also since the 6th of September, 9,000 migrants have left Malston, many of them heading towards hotel accommodation. Those are the facts. I encourage the Right Honourable Lady to stick to the facts and not fantasy. Madam Deputy Speaker, however, she raises some other points, and I would just like to say this, that my letter to the Home Affairs Select Committee sent today addresses all of the matters that she has just raised transparently and comprehensively. I've been clear that I made an error of judgment. I apologised for that error. I took responsibility for it and I resigned. But, Madam Deputy Speaker,
does the House want to hear what the Home Secretary has to say? Home Secretary.
I apologise for the error. I took responsibility, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I resigned for the error. But let's be clear about what's really going on here, Madam Deputy Speaker. The British people deserve to know which party is serious about stopping the invasion on our southern coast and which party is not. Some 40,000 people have arrived on the south coast this year alone, many of them facilitated by criminal gangs, some of them actual members of criminal gangs. So let's stop pretending that they are all refugees in distress. The whole country knows that that is not true, and it's only the honourable members opposite who pretend otherwise. Madam Deputy Speaker, we need to be straight with the public. The system is broken. Illegal migration is out of control, and too many people are more interested in playing political parlour games, covering up the truth, than solving the problem. I, Madam Deputy Speaker, am utterly serious about ending the scourge of illegal migration, and I am determined to do whatever it takes to break the criminal gangs and fix our hopelessly lax asylum system. That, Madam Deputy Speaker, is why I am in government. And that is why there are some people who would prefer to be rid of me. Well,
Order! I should just point out that I can hear who's making the noise, and it'll be a long time before they're called to ask a question. Secretary of State.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let them try. I know that I speak for the decent, law-abiding, patriotic majority of British people from every background that wants safe and secure borders. Labour is running scared that this party might just deliver them.
Sir Roger Gale.
Madam Deputy Speaker, will you allow me first to express my condolences to the family, the families of those affected by the incident at Dover, and particularly the family of the man who was responsible, who had very severe mental health difficulties. I think our thoughts ought to be with all of them. Madam Deputy Speaker, can I also thank my right honourable friend, the Minister of State, for taking the trouble and the time to come yesterday to see the facilities at Malston for himself and to greatly understand the problems that we've been facing. And can I thank the staff at Malston for the incredible dedication that they've been showing under very difficult circumstances. They are doing a superb job, and I hope everybody understands that. Madam Deputy Speaker, the facility at Malston, the asylum processing facility, was opened in January to take 1,500 people and to process them daily in not more than 48 hours, but mainly in 24 hours. That facility operated absolutely magnificently and very efficiently indeed until 5 weeks ago, when I'm afraid the Home Secretary took the policy decision not to commission further accommodation. And it is that that has led to the crisis at Malston. Will my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, now give the House an assurance, first, that the adequate accommodation will be provided to enable the Malston facility to return to its previous work? Will she honour the undertaking given by the Right Honourable Lady, the Member for Witham, and my honourable friend, the Member for Corby, who have indicated that this would be a temporary facility handling only 1,500 people per day, and that it would not be a permanent residence? And will she give a further undertaking that under no circumstances will Malston be turned into a permanent refugee camp?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his commitment to safeguarding the people who are at Malston and representing his local constituents in the area. And I was very pleased to meet with him a few weeks ago to hear from him about the situation at Malston. As I said, I just must gently correct him, however. On no occasion have I blocked the procurement of hotels or alternative accommodation to ease the pressure on Malston. I'm afraid that simply isn't true. And I'll repeat it again, but since September the 6th, when I was appointed, over 30 new hotels have been agreed to. They would provide over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces, many of those available to the people in Malston. Also, since the 6th of September, over 9,000 people have left Malston, many of those heading towards hotels. So on no occasion have I blocked the use of hotels. And I would just gently refer members of the House who seem to be labouring under that misapprehension to the Home Affairs Select Committee session last week, where officials and the various frontline professionals who've been working with me on this issue confirm that we've been working energetically to procure alternative accommodation urgently for several weeks now. There are procedural and resource difficulties and challenges in doing that quickly. I would very much like to get alternative accommodation delivered more quickly, but we are working at pace to deliver contingency accommodation to deal with this acute problem.
Stuart MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Home Secretary for her statement, and I join the whole House in condemning the frightening attack at Western Jetfoil, in sending our sympathy to all those who were impacted, and indeed our thanks to all who responded so professionally. But, Madam Speaker, responsibility for the disaster and dysfunction at Malston and the unlawful detention conditions there lies squarely with the Home Secretary herself and her predecessors. She and they knew what was happening, including the numbers arriving, and she was provided with advice that, by all accounts, she did not act on. Now, she's very carefully said that she did not block hotel use, but did she at any point avoid supporting new procurement? And if not, why is it that we heard that her successor, or predecessor, depending on which way you look at it, had to intervene? Ultimately, Madam Speaker, what was a functioning facility in the summer is now totally unsafe, and that was on her watch. Looking to the future, what now? Unfortunately, the Home Secretary offers only the same old failed sound bites, discredited policies and nasty rhetoric. What we need is an expansion of safe legal routes, at a minimum reversing the loss of the routes under the Dublin Convention. Instead of £120 million in a disgraceful Rwanda dream, that could have trebled the number of asylum caseworkers working to clear the backlog. And why not fast-forward claims, for example, from the 16,000 Syrians and Afghans, half of whom have been waiting for over 6 months? Make decisions on their cases quickly. 95% and more will get asylum. They can move on and we can free up accommodation. Madam Speaker, on her letter today, last week the Home Secretary resigned, claiming she accepted responsibility, but the facts suggest that she tried to dodge it but got caught. Why else did she find time to request the accidental email recipient was to delete and forget, yet only notified senior officials and the Prime Minister after being confronted? These excuses will not wash. Ultimately, how can one so-called misjudgment last week be a resignation offence, and yet she can stay this week after admitting 6 of the very same misjudgments? She said no documents were top secret, but how many were marked official and sensitive? Did she do similar as Attorney General? How do we know?
Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, her return so quickly after an admitted ministerial code breach is a farce. It reflects poorly on her and poorly on the Prime Minister. Both should think again so that someone else can get on with the real work.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I refer the honourable gentleman to the letter that I sent today to the Chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee. I've been upfront about the details of my diary on the 19th of October. Cooperative with any review that's taken place. I've apologised, I've taken responsibility, and that's why I resigned. I hope the House will see that I'm willing to apologise without hesitation for what I've done and any mistakes that I've made. But what I will not do, under any circumstances, is apologise for things that I haven't done. It's been said that I sent a top secret document. That's wrong. It's been said that I sent a document about cyber security. That's wrong. It's been said that I sent a document about the intelligence agencies that would compromise national security. And it's wrong. 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 Madam Deputy Speaker, what is wrong is that, and worrying, is that without compunction, these assertions have been repeated as fact by politicians and journalists. And I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to clarify the record today.
Natalie Elphicke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to put on record my thanks to all of the first responders to the horrific incidents that happened at Dover yesterday. Constituents working at the Dover facility have raised concerns about the current safety at the site. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that this type of facility has no place in a busy open port like Dover? And can she look at moving it to a more appropriate, secure location immediately? And does she also agree that we cannot keep doing more of the same, paying millions of pounds to the French, but seeing ever-increasing numbers of illegal arrivals? It is now time for a new approach with the French to stop the boats leaving the French beaches, a joint channel security zone to tackle this issue and bring an end to this illegal immigration activity once and for all.
Well, I want to thank my honourable friend for her indefatigable campaigning on this issue, and I've been very grateful to her for her direct input on this issue. This is incredibly difficult. I don't want to sugarcoat the problem. There are incredibly multifaceted challenges that we have to deal with. And when it comes to Malston, like her, I'm very concerned about the conditions there, and I have been so for several weeks. That's why I've taken urgent action to stand up an operational team to increase the emergency accommodation on the site on a temporary and emergency basis. I was not willing to release hundreds of migrants into the local community. I won't do that. I will do everything I can to find cost-effective and practical alternatives. We need to find many more sites for accommodation and beds. We are looking at all instances, whether that is hotels, whether that's land owned by other agencies, for example, MOD or other government departments, looking at other dispersal around the country. We have to look exhaustively, but it isn't easy.
Dame Diana Johnson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome the Home Secretary to her place. And I look forward to her attending at the Home Affairs Select Committee on the 23rd of November, as we haven't seen a Home Secretary since February of this year. The Home Affairs Select Committee heard evidence last week that Malston was at breaking point. We were also told by the Home Office's Director General for Customer Services that 3 hotels were approved 1 week ago when the Right Honourable Member for Welwyn Hatfield was the then Home Secretary. So can this Home Secretary confirm exactly how many hotels or alternative accommodation options she was personally invited by her officials to approve for use during her first tenure as Home Secretary, and how many hotels or alternative accommodation options she actually did grant approval and permission for during her time. And finally, perhaps the Home Secretary might wish to join the Home Affairs Select Committee when we visit Malston again for the second time this week.
Well, I read with interest the session that the Honourable Lady conducted last week at her Select Committee, and I just want to put on record my immense thanks to the officials. The officials that you heard evidence from are brilliant and simply the best in the business, and they work day in, day out to try and get the best service. And I note from questions 67 to 78 approximately, there was a lot of discussion about my involvement and my grip of the situation, and I encourage all members to read that section of the transcript, which confirms on the record by officials with whom I've been working directly that there has been active procurement of hotels. There's been a huge amount of work which has been put on. How many? I will repeat myself again. Since the 6th of September, over 30 new hotels have been agreed, providing over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces. That's been under my watch. That's been when I've been in charge of the Home Office. And I'm very grateful to all those officials. And I must put on record my thanks to the now departed Minister Purseglove, who has been instrumental in assisting in dealing with this problem.
Craig McKinley.
My right honourable friend mentioned Albanians in her statement. I hear that 2/3 of those at Malston are Albanians. Does she have an absolute figure for that? But is my right honourable friend aware that in Germany and Sweden, that work to the same immigration accords as we do, they allow 0 applicants from Albania? Surely it stands to reason that an EU applicant country, a NATO country, a country that's in the Council of Europe and is patently not a war zone, we should not be accepting refugee status and claims from such a country. What is she going to do about that aspect of this problem?
Well, my honourable friend again raised a very important feature which has emerged over the last 6 to 9 months about the prominence of Albanian migrants arriving on our shores. And he's right. Albania is not a war-torn country. And it is very difficult to see how claims for asylum really can be legitimate claims for asylum. I would also note that we see a large number of Albanian migrants arriving here and claiming to be victims of modern slavery. Again, I really am circumspect of those claims because Albania, of course, is a signatory to the European Convention Against Trafficking, the original convention that underlies our modern slavery laws. And actually, if those people are genuinely modern slavery victims, they should be claiming that protection in Albania.
Diane Abbott.
The Home Secretary will be aware that one of the problems with the asylum system is the unacceptably long time it takes to process claims. The Home Affairs Select Committee took evidence from the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, and he told us that currently caseworkers, decision makers, are making 1.3 decisions a week. The Leeds pilot, which is referred to, has put the number of decisions up to 2.7 decisions a week. Doesn't the Home Secretary understand that this is far too slow? And what is she going to do about it? And isn't it the case that if she spent less time playing to the gallery on immigration and more time dealing with the practical problems, this would be to the benefit of the taxpayer, the Home Office staff that work so hard, and to the asylum seekers themselves.
It's not often I say this, Madam Deputy, but I do actually agree with a lot of what the Right Honourable Lady has just said. She is right. And when I arrived at the Home Office in September, I was very dismayed to find that, as was set out at the Select Committee last week, only 4% of those claims waiting in the system have been processed so far. So we have a very slow-moving system. That is unacceptable, and that is a big part of the problem. And part of our plan to solve the problem is to speed up asylum processing. We're putting more resources behind it, we're putting more technology behind it, we're trying to identify how we can be more efficient. But yes, it's a big feature which is clogging up the system, and we see the pressure playing out at Malston.
Lawson.
Clearly, the situation at Manston's become unsustainable because of the record numbers coming across the channel. 40,000, and November last year was the highest month, so we haven't seen the end of it. And of course, as my honourable friend from Planet South has said, a record number of Albanians, 12,000, up from just 50 2 years ago. So following on from his question, what exactly is the arrangement with the Albanian government about returns? What arrangements is she looking at to fast-track Albanians, potentially in separate processing centres, helped by those Albanian officials we've allowed to come here to assist? How many Albanians have so far been returned in the last 12 months? How many of those Albanians have taken voluntary return payments to return? And of those, how many of them have actually come back to the UK again?
Well, again, my right honourable friend is right to mention the returns agreement, and we really want to maximise the deployment of the terms of that agreement. I think that's a brilliant starting point for trying to accelerate some of the processing and ultimately the removals of Albanian nationals. Albanian nationals are received in the same way as other small boat arrivals, and however, due to the excellent relationship built with my Albanian counterpart, we are able to expedite removal of Albanians who have no reason to be in the UK. We want to maximise that, we want to push forward with that, and faster.
Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to read to the Home Secretary a text message that a colleague of mine received this afternoon from an immigration expert. He says, "Just had a call with Ukraine that has reduced our team to tears. People are facing losing their lives in Kyiv or watching their children freeze in the countryside purely because of delays in processing their visas. UK Home Office, paper pushing and unnecessary waits are costing people their lives in Ukraine." Ukraine, Madam Deputy Speaker, not Albania, Ukraine. Is that what the Home Secretary means when she says that this is a government taking asylum seriously?
Home Secretary.
Well, I do dispute his version of events with respect. Since 2015, Madam Deputy Speaker, the UK has offered a place to over 380,000 men, women and children seeking safety, including those from Hong Kong, Syria, Afghanistan and Ukraine, as well as many family members of refugees.
John Redwood.
I strongly support all that the Home Secretary said in her opening statement. She spoke for the nation in saying we need to control this problem, and she spoke for all those caught up in these tragic events. So I hope that all men and women of goodwill will get behind her, and that the Home Office will fully support her in making sure we can speed up processing and in returning all those illegal economic migrants to the safe countries they came from.
Secretary.
My right honourable friend speaks a lot of sense, as always, and he's right. The British people have had enough of an out-of-control borders system, and it's incumbent on this government, and I know for a fact that this Prime Minister takes this issue extremely seriously, and I know that he will leave no stone unturned until the problem is fixed.
Stella Creasy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There is nothing patriotic about making children suffer, but that is exactly what is happening as a direct result of this Home Secretary's failure to get to grips with processing asylum. She talks as if the hotels are somehow a better option. In my constituency, there is one with 150 children in, squeezed alongside another 350 adults, 7 or 8 to a room. No notice to the local authority they would be placed there. No cooking facilities. No school places for these primary school-aged children. No clothes for most of them, especially for the winter weather. No play facilities, if they are allowed out at all, of these prisons. No safeguarding as far as any of us can see. If the Home Secretary is so confident that this is meeting her duty of care on behalf of this country, then will she publish the contract requirements for how children are housed in hotels and the precise details of the sorts of services they should expect and that we should be proud of as a country dealing with those fleeing asylum? Thank you.
Home Secretary.
Well, we are currently accommodating unaccompanied asylum-seeking children in hotels, with hotels with a maximum occupancy of 353, and there is additional accommodation available coming on stream. But what I would just say to the Honourable Lady is this: I think it's a fallacy to suggest that we're somehow cutting corners. When I've arrived at the Home Office, I've been frankly very dismayed and appalled to find that we're spending on average £150 per person per night to accommodate people in hotels. By my standard, that's quite a nice hotel. And upon my review and closer scrutiny of how that decision-making was taking place, I identified several 4-star hotels around the country being procured for this purpose. For me, that's not an acceptable use of taxpayers' money.
Jane Hunt.
Oh, thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Unsolicited economic migration to the UK via illegal trafficking must be stopped. We must use our limited resources to support valid asylum cases that have not come from a safe country. What steps is the Home Office taking to return illegal immigrants now to their home countries in the cases of countries who will accept them?
Home Secretary.
Well, we take removals very importantly, and actually part of the plan to solve this is actually to try and accelerate the turnaround and the processing of people who are arriving illegally. We've had some success recently in removing people back to Albania within quite a short period of time, but we need to go further and faster.
Joanna Cherry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I just gently remind the Home Secretary that it is not illegal to seek asylum. What is illegal is to detain people without a proper basis in law. So can she confirm that she has ignored legal advice that keeping these asylum seekers at Malston for more than 24 hours could be illegal detention? And can she also tell us whether she's been advised that what's happening at Malston may amount to unlawful deprivation of liberty in terms of Article 5 of the ECHR, and also inhuman and degrading treatment in terms of Article 3 ECHR? Now, despite the Home Secretary's best efforts, we're still bound to comply with the Convention by virtue of our domestic law. So what's she going to do about all of this? And even if she doesn't care about the human rights of the people detained at Malston, does she understand that her failure to obey the law here may end up costing the taxpayers vast amounts of money in terms of court fees and damages?
Well, I confirm that I have not and ever ignored legal advice. The Law Officer's Convention, which I still take very seriously, means I won't comment on the contents of legal advice that I may have seen. But what I will say is this: I am not prepared to release migrants prematurely into the local community in Kent to no fixed abode. That's an unacceptable option to me.
Nick Fletcher.
In the Secretary of State's statement, she spoke of the successes of the UK-French Joint Alliance cell stopping 29,000 illegal immigrants crossing. What are her thoughts on doubling these resources and finally eliminating these dangerous crossings?
Part of our plan
Secretary.
to tackle this issue is about increasing our resources and our manpower to intercept and detect the organised criminal gangs upstream. That's what part of the work with the French entails, and that's why I was very encouraged by discussions I've had with my French counterpart, Minister Darmanin, about how we can work better and more closely together with our intelligence agencies and our law enforcement agencies jointly upstream to try and intercept early on.
Ben Bradshaw.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Is it still explained to incoming ministers, as it was to me more than 21 years ago, how easily one's mobile phone can be compromised by organised criminals and hostile foreign powers? If so, how was her mobile phone and the mobile phone of the former Prime Minister, the member for South West Norfolk, compromised in these security breaches?
Home Secretary.
Well, I've set out the details in the letter of today, but I've made it clear that there was no issue about a compromise to national security.
Sir Desmond Swain.
Can I thank her for her dedication and the work that she is doing? What are the prospects of securing an alternative airline carrier to make the Rwanda plan a reality?
Home Secretary.
I'm very committed to delivering the Rwanda plan. That took a huge amount of work and commitment by the Right Honourable, my Right Honourable friend, the member for Witham, and the former Prime Minister, the member for Uxbridge. And I think that it is incredibly crucial to our multifaceted approach to this problem. If you look at the Australian experience of tackling a similar issue, they will say that one very powerful tool they had in tackling the problem was the moment they were able to return people or move them out of the territory to Papua New Guinea or Nauru. It had a massive deterrent effect, and that's what we want to deploy.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The conditions at Malston are clearly unsafe and inhumane, and we know obviously the suffering that people have experienced there after 12 years of shameful watch of this government. However, we also do understand the lack of accommodation across the country, and that's why I asked the Home Secretary why she won't open up a Homes for Refugees scheme so people in our communities can support people properly within our own communities.
Yes. Home Secretary.
But whilst the issue at Malston is indisputably concerning, I don't want us to create alarm unnecessarily. So when she talks about the language that she uses, I do gently urge her not to use inflammatory language. We are aware, for example, we are aware of a very small number of cases of diphtheria reported at Malston, but there are very good medical facilities there. All protocols have been followed. People are being fed, they are being clothed, they are being sheltered. There are very high numbers at Malston, unprecedented numbers. We are working at pace to alleviate that pressure and getting people out. We anticipate, hopefully, 300 people leaving this evening and so on throughout the week. We are working urgently to solve the problem.
Dr. Julian Lewis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, given that it seems virtually impossible to stop large numbers of people landing illegally, does she think it will be possible to enable those who have landed illegally and have a poor case to be removed promptly without a change in the law? And if she thinks the law has to be changed, which law is it?
Home Secretary.
Well, one of the other plans that we've been working on is to change the law, because unfortunately our laws have too low a threshold, and that's why our modern slavery laws are being abused by illegitimate claimants. And we also need to take action to accelerate the process and to prevent the exploitation of our laws. People are coming here, they're claiming asylum unfairly, unjustifiably. They're claiming modern slavery laws, they're abusing our human rights laws and our other protections. They're frankly taking advantage of the generosity of the British people.
Absala Begum.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Malston is supposed to be a short-term holding facility. People are not supposed to be there for more than 48 hours. That means people must be being detained illegally in these conditions. So will the Home Secretary tell us how many people have been detained for more than 48 hours? How many claims for unlawful detention is she expecting, and at what cost?
Home Secretary.
Well, we are aware that people have been detained, and we have very, very high numbers at Malston, and that's why we're taking really exhaustive steps to ensure that we can procure alternative sites. We're looking at the dispersal mechanism and sites around the country and other local authorities. We are looking at hotels. Unfortunately, we have no other choice but to look at hotels at the moment. We are looking at other immigration detention or removal centres. So we're looking at a wide range of alternative places to which we can safely accommodate the migrants.
Kit Malthouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the Home Secretary's statement? In it, she says importantly that everybody who arrives illegally undergoes essential security checks before they're released. Could she confirm that this applies not just to those who claim asylum, but also those who land and do not claim asylum and are in effect arriving without a visa and therefore are eligible for temporary release from which they may not return?
Secretary.
Well, he's right. The processing is as follows. People will arrive. They go first of all to the Western Jetfoil, where they are, they get dry clothes. They are looked after in the immediate arrival onto the territory. They are then taken to Malston for biosecurity and security checks, is the type that he's just talked about.
Chris Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. She says the system's broken. Well, yes, it is broken. When you see the number of people taking dangerous trips across the Channel rise year on year and year, yes, it's broken when it takes longer and longer to deal with individual claims, so it's of greater cost to the British taxpayer. Yes, it's broken when you have thousands of people in completely inappropriate accommodation, which is probably breaking the law, and they may end up having to seek compensation against the government, again threatening the taxpayer. Yes, it's broken when ministers, a Home Secretary, breaches the ministerial code 6 times and only thinks that she has to step aside for 6 days. I believe in the rehabilitation of offenders, but don't you have to serve the time first? Or is there one rule for everybody else and a completely different one for her?
Well, I gently refer the honourable gentleman to my letter that I sent today to the chairman of the Home Affairs Committee. That's been clear about the timeline, my actions, the decisions for my actions. I apologised, I took responsibility, and that's why I resigned. But what this political witch hunt is all about is about ignoring the facts of the problem. The facts of the problem are that we do have a problem with the slow time that it takes to process asylum claims, and that's why we are taking immediate action to bring the asylum backlog down. We've got a pilot which is being rolled out. We've got more resources and decision makers being put into the front line, and we've got a different system of trying to assess the claims so that we can try and speed up the time that people are waiting for a decision.
Sir William Cash.
May I commend my right honourable friend very strongly for her statement. Does she agree that we must make a clear, legal and enforceable distinction in statute law between genuine refugees and illegal economic migrants and deal with this problem once and for all?
Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend is spot on. I think we have to tell the truth to the British people. This is these people are not all refugees fleeing war, fleeing persecution, with human rights violations that they have suffered. They are coming here, often at their own will, often having paid tens of thousands of pounds to have procured a dangerous and lethal journey illegally across the Channel, because they know that our laws aren't fit for purpose, and they know that they can get away with a spurious claim.
Alison Thewlis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's been widely reported that children are being detained at the Malston site. Can she confirm, because her minister couldn't confirm last week, how many children are on site right now?
Secretary.
Well, we don't routinely detain children or unaccompanied asylum-seeking children at Malston, but there are a number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children have been accommodated, not detained, for a brief period this summer while the accommodation was identified. And of course, people were evacuated to Malston yesterday, and that did include children.
Sir Edward Lee.
If people don't want to go to Malston, they can stay in France. we all know what's really behind these unpleasant personal attacks is because this Home Secretary is the only one with the guts, the determination, the legal knowledge to reform our ridiculous human rights law and detain these people, which is the only way, and send them back, the only way that we're going to deal with this. And those who constantly make these personal attacks to somebody who has made just one mistake and apologise, to remember the old motto, understand and judge not. Has she the determination to amend our ridiculous laws?
Secretary. My right honourable friend is absolutely right. We need to change the law. There are too many people here coming here and making spurious human rights claims, protracting the asylum application system. They know that they can put in appeal after appeal, they can challenge decisions, and they can spend a lot of time here in full knowledge of the fact that they are not genuine asylum seekers.
Emma Hardy.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. As the Home Affairs Select Committee report showed, it takes on average 550 days to process unaccompanied children. The report also illustrated that some of these unaccompanied children go missing from their hotels, sometimes temporarily and sometimes permanently. What is the Home Secretary doing to find these children and to protect them from criminal or sexual exploitation?
Secretary.
Well, of course, it's very serious when a child goes missing, and particularly in those circumstances. And when that does happen, we work very closely with the local authorities and the police to operate a robust missing persons protocol. We've also changed the national transfer scheme, so all local authorities with children's services must support young people, and we need to identify and ensure that proper risk assessments are put in place so that we can properly put in place the proper protections to make sure this doesn't happen.
Caroline Noakes.
Can I declare my interest as a member of the RAMP project? Can I ask my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, returning to the issue of children? We've seen some terrible accounts of children sleeping on mats at Malston. Can she reassure the House that no children are being kept at Malston for longer than 48 hours, that there are proper safeguarding procedures in place? Can she let us know what work is being done with Kent County Council to make sure that those children that are there are being safeguarded? And can she please urge my right honourable friend, the Immigration Minister, to come to the Women and Equality Select Committee, where we're doing an inquiry into the asylum system. He's not available this Wednesday, but can he make it as soon as possible, please?
Secretary.
Well, we take extremely seriously our duty towards a duty of care towards children and young people who are in the system, and as I said, there are delays in the system because of an extortionate amount of cases which are due to be processed. But we are working to prioritise applications from children and young people where possible. And we want to increase overall decision making and the numbers and the capacity so that children are processed far more quickly than others.
For Eagle.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary has come to the House today and announced to us that the immigration system is broken. Can she tell us who's been in power for the last 12 years?
Secretary.
Well, I'll tell you what the British people need to know. They need to know that it was the Labour government who oversaw mass migration and effectively a de facto open borders policy with record levels of immigration into this country. And it's the Labour Party that will continue to allow uncontrolled borders. They would cancel Rwanda, they would not take any action to stop illegal migration, and they would make a mockery of our borders.
Kate Knifton.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State will be aware of concerns that I've raised recently about the lack of joined-up planning between the Home Office, Serco and local authorities regarding asylum accommodation, and the specific concerns I've raised regarding the issue of the use of a hotel in my constituency of Burton. Can I therefore ask the Secretary of State to meet with me and the Staffordshire Leaders Board, who are keen to ensure a joined-up approach to asylum dispersal through improved communication between local authorities, Serco and the Home Office?
Secretary.
Well, coming into the Home Office in September has really shown me how the decision-making process behind choosing the hotels goes on. And I've heard from several colleagues about their concerns about the use of hotels. I'm very happy to meet with her and her colleagues to hear about the concerns in her local area. That we need to make them much more evenly distributed. We need to make sure that areas are taking their fair share, but ultimately we need to ensure that people have a bed to stay in and a room to stay in, because that is where the problem originates.
Please remain seated to ask your question, Alan. Alan Durrance.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and good evening. Mr Deputy Speaker, I'm sure that all members of this House will join me in thanking the staff undertaking the difficult task of keeping everyone safe in these challenging circumstances. Mr Deputy Speaker, will the Home Secretary of State give firm assurances today that members of the Prison Officers Association and other staff working at Malston will remain free from personal liability for any illegal decisions by the government around extended detention?
Secretary.
Well, we are always concerned about the personal responsibilities and safety of the staff at Malston. And let me just take this opportunity to pay tribute to every single person who's been working on the front line, in particular over the last few days, where it's been quite chronic, quite acute, and incredibly tough for them. So they are doing a brilliant job, and will do everything to ensure that their professional positions are safeguarded.
Gary Sambrook.
Mr Deputy Speaker, we need to change the definition of asylum. Many people who are in these centres and hotels are illegal migrants. Many of them have taken the chance. They're economic migrants who are taking a chance by crossing the English Channel. Can I ask the Home Secretary, if people come here illegally, why can't we just deport them?
Secretary.
Well, he raises an important point, and he's absolutely right. If you look at other European countries, they take a very different approach to the consideration and processing of asylum claims. The reality is once someone makes an asylum claim, we are duty-bound to consider it. What the Rwanda scheme does, and what's very good about that, is it means that the asylum claim will be considered in Rwanda, and therefore we will be able to physically remove them before that long time delay takes place.
John MacDonald.
I have had consistently 1,500 asylum seekers in hotels in my constituency. I think it's the largest number in any constituency, and I welcome them. I welcome them, and I congratulate the local agencies, the local voluntary sector, local churches, gurdwaras and mosques for all the support that they've given to these people because of the experiences that they've gone through. Many of them suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. However, this situation was meant to be resolved by relocation and the fast processing of the cases themselves, the bulk of which I believe are accepted, when they are processed, they're accepted as genuine asylum seekers. That means that now we're into our second year and beyond. It means there is a need now to review the resources that is going into local areas like mine, particularly to support the local NHS and local schools, and yes, the local authority and local voluntary sector. Can I ask the Home Secretary to initiate that review as rapidly as possible? We want to do all we can to assist these people, but obviously we need the local resources to do that.
Home Secretary.
Well, there are challenges, as I've set out today, in securing sufficient accommodation, full stop, whether that's hotels or dispersal accommodation, and that's due to the limited private rental market stock. We do work with local authorities to ensure that there's sufficient support for people who are arriving in those areas, but yes, there is a definite pressure, financial and otherwise, by people being accommodated for long periods of time around the country.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Now then, we've got Albanian criminals leaving Albania, which is a safe country. The same criminals are then setting up shop in France. They're then leaving France, which is a safe country, and coming to the UK across the Channel. And then when they get into accommodation, we've got the opposition parties saying the accommodation is not good enough for them. Well, does the Home Secretary agree with me? If the accommodation is not good enough for them, they can get on a dinghy and go straight back to France.
Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend's right. The average cost per night is £150 per person per night in a hotel. By my standards, that's quite a nice hotel, I'm afraid. Therefore, I think any complaints that the accommodation isn't good enough is frankly absolutely indulgent and ungrateful.
Janet Davey.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. 5 separate sources told the Sunday Times that legal breach at Mansion needed to be resolved urgently. by rehousing asylum seekers in alternative accommodation. Are all 5 lying?
Well, as I've said, and I'm very happy to confirm by reference to the timeline, effectively, I've been aware of this issue for several weeks. I would love to be able to magic up thousands of beds overnight. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. As a result of my concerns, which I identified several weeks ago, we've put into place a whole operational command to try and increase the capacity of accommodation, ease the pressure on Malston, but it takes time.
Sir Christopher Cho.
Mr Deputy Speaker, isn't the reason why Sweden and Germany don't countenance asylum seekers from Albania the fact that those countries don't have laws against modern slavery which are being abused and exploited by the Albanian gangs?
Yeah. Well, as I said, Albania is a signatory to the European Convention Against Trafficking. That's the originating international convention which underlines our modern slavery laws. There is absolutely no reason in law why an Albanian national cannot claim modern slavery protection in Albania.
Alex Cunningham.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I don't think it was unkind of my honourable friend, the member for Wallasey, to remind the Home Secretary that the systems she's rubbished time and time again today are a product of 12 years of Tory government. Now, staff who are employed at Malston are extremely anxious about their responsibilities and role and how law-breaking decisions affect them. So can the Home Secretary assure the House that staff will remain free from personal liability for any illegal decisions taken by others, including ministers, around extended detention?
Secretary.
I'm very proud of this government's track record on helping some of the most vulnerable people coming to this country from some of the most dangerous parts of the world. 55,000 visas issued under the Ukrainian family scheme, 138,000 Ukrainian sponsorship scheme visas, 15,000 individuals from Afghanistan under Operation Pitting, 5,000 people arrived in the year since Operation Pitting, 20,000 people under the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme. That's a record of which I'm proud.
Jonathan Gullis.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The people of Stoke-on-Trent North, Kidsgrove and Talk are appalled by the amount of illegal economic migrants coming across the English Channel. And again, Stoke-on-Trent, which currently houses over 800, is being asked to carry the burden with an attempt to try and place more in the North Stafford Hotel. Will my right honourable friend immediately stop this abuse of Stoke-on-Trent and instead put illegal economic migrants in places with open border and free movement supporters, such as the Shadow Immigration Minister?
Well, I was very grateful for the time that my honourable friend gave me with his Stoke colleagues to explain exactly the difficulty in Stoke. And what I have identified is that there is a disproportionate distribution of refugees throughout the country in hotels. We need to make it much more equivalent. We need to make it much more cost effective. We need to make it fair.
Damien Griffith.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, in contrast to Labour's commitment to employ 100 extra specialist National Crime Agency officers to tackle the criminal gangs upstream, her predecessor as Home Secretary asked the NCA to draw up plans for a 40% reduction in staff. So can she now explain to us what are her plans for NCA staffing and how does she intend to improve collaboration with the French on this problem?
Working collaboratively with the French is a key component of solving this problem. We can't do it alone, is the simple truth. And that's why I'm very pleased that we have a relationship with the French, and I'm very keen to amplify that relationship. It will involve greater surveillance between the French and the British authorities. It will involve greater intelligence cooperation upstream and interception upstream between the French and British authorities. It will involve joint working at all points in the system. That cooperation is vital.
Leonici.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm sure the Home Secretary knows that she has my full support in doing whatever she can to be able to stop
illegal migration into this country. We've had several conversations about this, but does she share my concerns about placing illegal immigrants in places that don't have the infrastructure or the expertise to look after people when they are actually displaced across the UK? But also, would she commit to making sure that she's talking to colleagues on these benches when potentially they may have illegal migrants coming into their constituencies, to make sure that we can represent our constituents properly?
Well, ultimately, we need to bear down on the asylum backlog, so there are fewer people in the UK waiting for a decision. And also, we need to stop the use of hotels at £6 million a night.
Andy MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. During her first disastrous spell in the role, the Home Secretary ignored legal advice from her officials that explicitly set out the unlawfulness of the inhumane treatment of migrants at the Malston Centre. That's not inflammatory language, that's fact. And if that's not bad enough, she's now admitted to breaking the ministerial code on 6 separate occasions. How on earth can she stand at that dispatch box with a straight face and try to defend the cruelty towards the most desperate of people? Doesn't she need to take a look in the mirror to see who is a threat to national security and accept that she's totally unfit for the job?
Well, I refer the honourable gentleman to my letter that I sent today, in which I've been very fulsome in the details of the circumstances of the 19th of October. I've apologised for the error, taken responsibility, and that's why I resigned. What I would say is that I haven't ignored or dismissed any legal advice that I have been provided with. I can't go into the details of that legal advice because the Law Officers Convention. That is part of the decision-making process that all ministers go through. We have to take into account our legal duties, not to leave people destitute. I have to take into account the fact that I don't want to release prematurely hundreds of migrants into the Kent community. I have to take into account the value for money. I have to take into account the fairness for the British taxpayer.
Richard Drax.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome my right honourable friend to her place and thank her for all the courageous efforts she's making in dealing with a very difficult problem that the opposition benches, their answer is let them all in. Yes. That is totally unacceptable. Can I ask my old friend, one solution surely would be to return these illegal refugees to countries from whence they came, if indeed it's possible, like, for example, Albania. With how many countries is she negotiating to do this, and has she succeeded in any of those negotiations?
Secretary.
Well, you're right. I mean, effectively, the Labour Party don't have any solutions for this problem, so they'd rather spend airtime on a distraction. That's what this is all about. But what I want to say to my honourable friend is that, yes, we are having some success with returning people more swiftly to Albania. It's early days, and I don't want to overplay it because it's still very, very difficult legally. But those agreements with those safe countries are absolutely vital to ensure that people who are coming from safe countries, not from persecution, not fleeing war, can be legitimately returned because they are not here for asylum.
Drew Hendry.
Mr Deputy Speaker, as Home Secretary responsible for national security, if she was made aware of a government employee, a civil servant, who, despite apologies, is sacked for sharing government material several times on private email or device, would she sanction that employee being re-employed?
As I've made clear, I'm very willing to apologise for mistakes that I have made, but what I'm not willing to do is to apologise for things I haven't done. So, as I said, it's not right that there's been a breach of national security. It's not right that there was a document about security matters, intelligence agencies or law enforcement. Those are simply not true.
Ali.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. In the words of the Home Secretary, the asylum system is broken. 12 years of Tory government and the asylum system is broken. Now, if she says we've got no solutions, the Home Secretary can press upon the Prime Minister to call a general election and let the electorate decide who they trust more. The recent revelations of conditions...
Order, resume your seat for 1 second. Please
can all members now, you can see what time it is, and we've got 5 hours of business ahead of us, plus votes. Questions, please, not statements. Question, please, Mr. Alley.
The recent revelations of conditions at Malston Processing Centre highlight the complete and utter failure of leadership at the Home Office. Will the Home Secretary do the decent thing once again, where she did it on the 19th of October, and resign from that position because of the conditions at Malston?
Great.
Listen, I'm very clear about what this government's priority is. It's about tackling the scourge of illegal migration, taking a firm line and changing the law where our laws are being abused, working collaboratively with the French, ensuring that we are removing people who are not meant to be here, and ensuring that the British people can have confidence in their borders.
Rees Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Many in my constituency are worried about paying their heating bills. Many in my constituency are concerned about getting GP appointments, and many of my hotels are full up with illegal migrants. Does she appreciate the sense of unfairness that my constituents have? And when will legislation be coming forward to resolve this situation?
That's great.
Yes, I do appreciate the seriousness of this issue, and it's been my #1 priority since September. It is unacceptable that we are spending £6 million a day on hotel accommodation for asylum seekers. It is unacceptable that we have 35,000 asylum seekers in hotels distributed around the country. We need to bring that to an end. We need a comprehensive plan of alternative sites. We need to speed up our processing of asylum. We need to remove people from the UK more quickly, and ultimately we need to change our law, and we'll be introducing legislation later this year to ensure that there is no longer any abuse of our laws.
Olivia Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I refer members to my register of interest for being a member of RAMP. I've been listening very carefully, and I would like to ask again the Home Secretary, how many extra hotel rooms has she personally procured in her position as Home Secretary? And in her letter of resignation, she wrote, pretending we haven't made mistakes, carrying on as everyone can't see that we have made them, and hoping that things will magically come right is not serious politics. Would she agree that she has made yet another mistake, that she should accept responsibility, and that she should resign?
Great.
I'm very pleased to repeat for the record that since the 6th of September, under my watch, over 30 new hotels have been agreed. Those would provide over 4,500 additional hotel bed spaces to be brought into use.
Mark Jenkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister is 6 days into his summer pledge of fixing this crisis within 100 days. So I hope, and my constituents in Workington hope, that my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, is getting the support that she needs around that cabinet table.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is her assessment of those held, among those held, of the scale of abuse of our modern slavery laws?
Listen, I thank my honourable friend for raising this point. Let me just say 2 points. First of all, the Prime Minister is absolutely committed to fixing this problem. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever about his determination to fix this once and for all, and I have huge amounts of confidence in him, and I'm very grateful to him for his support operationally on this. When it comes to modern slavery laws, it's not just people coming here on the boats claiming modern slavery, but what they're doing is that buys them effectively a year, because it takes on average 400 days for a modern slavery claim to be processed, so they know that they will be accommodated in the UK free of charge. But it's even worse than that. We're getting now serious foreign national offenders in this country who have served sometimes several years for sex offences, for drug offences, for serious offences. And when they finish their sentence, the UK authorities want to deport them. What do? They claim to be a victim of modern slavery.
Karen Bartlett.
Deputy Speaker, it is absolutely essential that the pressures on the Malston Centre are relieved as soon as possible. It is also essential that we do not simply replicate some of those conditions in the concentrations of hotels. I have a ward now where there are so many hotels being commissioned, 2 more this weekend, that the ratio is 800% above Home Office guidelines. The local authority is getting virtually no support in order to manage this, and there is no capacity at all being provided to the health service to deal with the very real health issues that need to be dealt with. Will she ensure that Home Office officials meet me immediately to discuss how we ensure that the asylum seekers coming into these hotels is properly managed and properly dispersed?
Well, I'm very glad for the Minister of State for Immigration to meet with the Honourable Lady to discuss this issue in detail. What I would say is my review is identifying exactly the process of identification of the hotels around the country. We're seeing a real imbalance in geography and geography, effectively, of where the hotels are located. There's a real pressure in certain places, and then other places are not taking people. So I think we need to bring some equivalence to this process. We ultimately need to bring it to an end. We need to make it more cost effective, but ultimately we need to be processing people more quickly.
Mark Olongi.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. We have heard yet again today that members opposite want to prioritise the welfare of illegal immigrants. My priority, and I believe the priority of the people on this side of the House, should be to those of our constituents who are desperate for social housing, those constituents who are sofa surfing, many of them women and children. Is it an outrage, Home Secretary, that we are spending £2.5 billion a year when we'll be soon asking these very same people to share the burden of further cuts to public services?
Well, my honourable friend raises a really important point. The facts of the matter are we are receiving an unprecedented amount of people coming into this country, many of whom are coming illegally. They require accommodation. That is putting excess pressure on our current housing stock, whether that's hotels or the private rented market or other beds in other sorts of buildings. Ultimately, we don't have enough space for these people, and we need to find it quickly. It's very difficult. It will be done, but it will take time.
I'm trying to get everybody in, but you're going to have to help me. So please focus on the question rather than a long preface. Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Home Secretary for her endeavours for a truly difficult and complex situation. Can I also ask the Home Secretary, will she outline what steps are in place to ensure that asylum centres are able to provide a basic standard of mental health care for those affected by the disgraceful action at the weekend? And can the Home Secretary ensure that asylum seekers are safe whilst waiting for the determination of their applications, as is the law in this great nation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Thank you.
Well, of course, as I say, and I'll reiterate it again and again, I'm very grateful for the brilliant response from the emergency services and the authorities and everybody at the Western Jetfoil and Malston yesterday, and actually subsequently dealing with this incident. And we are making sure that they are well supported. We will need more staff because of the increased numbers. I'm not going to mislead you on that, but we are trying to make arrangements to ensure that they are supported so that they are not overburdened.
Scott Benton.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. May I welcome the Home Secretary back to her rightful place on the front bench. She has the support of the millions of Britons who are hoping, just hoping that one day we may finally get a grip of the small boats crisis. The Home Affairs Committee has been told that between 1 to 2% of the entire male population of Albania, that's 10,000 men, have arrived in the UK in the past year. Why on earth are we accepting asylum claims from Albania when countries such as Germany and Sweden do not?
Well, we have to ensure that our asylum laws are fit for purpose, and there has been some great achievements secured by the passage of the Nationality and Borders Act, and they're going to be operationalised in due course. But he's right, we need to change our laws to ensure that people are not abusing our legal frameworks.
Nadia Whittam.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Yesterday, in a horrifying attack, a man threw petrol bombs at Toghaven Immigration Centre in Dover. Does the Home Secretary consider this an act of terrorism? If not, why not? And will she unequivocally condemn all those who promote hatred towards migrants?
Well, of course, I mean, I'm not going to comment on the particular details of this case. It's a very, very sad case. It's a very worrying case. I am very, very concerned about the safety and the security of the site at Western Jetfoil and of Malston. We've evacuated the people from Malston, from Western Jetfoil to Malston, and now they are back to Western Jetfoil. There's been a huge amount of effort by the authorities, and I'm very grateful to them.
Good about.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Home Secretary agree that anyone listening to this debate could only conclude that the opposition benches are more interested in illegal economic migrants than law-abiding British people?
Great.
Well, one of the promises in the 2019 manifesto, as my honourable friend will know, was to reduce overall numbers when it came to migration, and also to fix the problem of illegal migration. And I know, my friend, that we both campaigned to leave the European Union. 17 million people voted for control over their borders. That is what this government will deliver.
Winter.
Mr Deputy Speaker, the Refugee Council has demanded a task force to clear the 120,000 backlog of asylum seekers, most of whom are living in absolutely appalling, overcrowded, unsafe, inhumane circumstances, and it is costing for those in hotels about 5.6 million in your own admission. They also call for the government to convene a summit of refugees and migration experts, local authorities, housing providers to examine options for short and long-term suitable accommodation for people seeking asylum. Will she do this?
Well, as I've said, I'm very concerned about the how we accommodate people who are waiting for their asylum claims to be processed. We need to bear down on that backlog so they're not waiting for so long and they can get a decision, whether that be to remove them or for them to be here on a legal basis. We need to ensure that the accommodation is cost-effective, lawful and reasonable.
Tom Hunt.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I make no apology for prioritising the welfare of my constituents who sent me here. I do not wake up in a day worrying about welfare of people who have illegally entered our country and so in scant regard for our laws. So these reasons why I'm so concerned about the North Hotel. Will the Home Secretary agree with me, though, that it is bad, we shouldn't have illegal immigrants in hotels, but ultimately this will not be nipped in the bud unless we get fully behind Miranda and look at the definition of a refugee, because we know so many people who get refugee status are not refugees, they are economic migrants and they should be sent back.
Well, I think my honourable friend is right. We need to call out the misrepresentation of this problem. It is not the case that these are all refugees fleeing persecution, war-torn countries or conflict or human rights violations. Many of the people here are arriving here on small boats, are actively and willingly procuring those journeys. They are often paying tens of thousands of pounds for those journeys. They are coming here knowingly and willingly, and they are coming here for economic reasons.
Kit Green.
Can the Home Secretary tell us how many, if any, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children have been accommodated in Malston or Western Jetfoil, and what arrangements she is making to keep them in safety in hotels, properly supervised and safeguarded?
Secretary.
Well, as far as I'm aware, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children are not routinely detained at Malston. However, what I will say is that there were a number of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who were accommodated, not detained, for a brief period this summer while accommodation was being identified. And of course, overnight, people have been evacuated to Malston yesterday from the Western Jetfoil, and that will have included some children.
Sunderland.
Mr Deputy Speaker, thank you. The issues we've been discussing in the House this afternoon are symptomatic in the main of illegal immigration. Could I please first of all commend the Home Secretary for her stated intent to deal resolutely with the small boats crisis? And secondly, can I please ask her exactly what we might expect for primary legislation needed and also when?
Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his observations, and ultimately he's right. We need to be straight with people. There's an influx of people, there's an unprecedented number of people coming to this country. They are claiming to be modern slaves, they are claiming asylum illegitimately, and they are effectively economic migrants. They're not coming here for humanitarian purposes. We therefore do need to change our laws. We need to ensure that there is a limitation on that ability to abuse our asylum laws. We need to ensure that our modern slavery laws are fit for purpose and cannot be exploited by illegitimate claimants.
Just to remind the Home Secretary to face the microphone, because I can't quite hear everything that's been said, and Hansard may have difficulties as well. Alex Sobel.
Mr Deputy Speaker, the Home Secretary letter today outlined 6 breaches where she used a personal device to send
it's there in black and white.
to send official emails using a personal Gmail address. When I receive emails from a Gmail, I assume they're personal emails. What assurances can she give the House that none of those emails were forwarded on to third parties, and what investigation has been made that those personal Gmail emails were not hacked by any foreign powers?
Secretary.
I have answered this question, but for repetition's sake, I will say that I have set out all the details in the letter of the 19th of October. None of those emails were forwarded on to anybody else. I'm here to focus on the task in hand, which is the situation at Malston, how we're going to bear down on our asylum backlog, and I would have thought his constituents would be more interested in that too, actually.
Then Bradley.
Speaker, can I first welcome my right and friend, the Home Secretary's robust approach to this issue, which is a matter of fairness that is hugely important to my constituents. Increasingly, Mr Deputy Speaker, young men are arriving in the UK and then later claiming to be unaccompanied children. At that point, the local authority has to treat them as looked after children, and then claiming to be 17, we then have to look after them until they are 25 years old. The average cost of a looked after child is over £100,000 a year. I think my constituents will be horrified to learn that their council tax is being spent on that when it's intended for public services. So can my right honourable friend commit to looking at these rules and making sure that these extortionate costs that are hammering funds intended to support my constituents with public services can be changed? Does she agree that it will be impossible for the public to trust that our immigration policies are properly robust and fair for as long as people can arrive here illegally from a safe country and be able to stay here at the expense of UK taxpayers?
Well, my honourable friend hits on a really important aspect of the problem, which is people who are coming here and claiming to be children. And we've really seen this trend over several years. What I would just say about Albania is we're getting, as I said, many Albanian people come here. The majority of them are adult single males. They are not by majority women or children or elderly people. And this claim of being a child is something that we are going to clamp down on. And in the new year, we will be delivering more robust age assessment procedures so that there will be less abuse of this very problem.
Steve McCabe.
When the Home Secretary said that Indian migrants represented the largest number of visa overstayers in this country, was that based on a Home Office briefing, and would she consider putting some details in the library so we can all see the extent of the problem to which she was referring?
Right.
What I'm keen to do is ensure that we honour our manifesto commitment, which is to bring overall migration figures down and clamp down on the scourge of illegal migration. I'm very keen to support the government, and I see my honourable friend here who's a trade minister in the negotiations on a historic deal with India. Great friends, great allies with whom a great partnership can be forged.
Brendan Clark-Smith.
Speaker, does my right honourable friend agree with me that those who campaign to take foreign criminals off flights, those who obstruct us from implementing our Rwanda scheme, and those who continue to encourage the shameful behaviour of so-called charities and activist lawyers have done nothing but contribute to this criminal activity and a system now bursting at the seams?
Well, my honourable friend again raises a really important point. Again, what we've seen, and I speak to our heroic border force officials on a regular basis, and they tell me about their first-hand experience. And what they have seen is repeated and vexatious claims. They see people arriving, they're not making a claim, and then they might see a lawyer, and then they suddenly come up with a claim after they've seen their lawyer. They make repeated and late claims as well because they know that that's how to game the system. I think there are real concerns about the practice of some lawyers, not all lawyers, but some lawyers, and I encourage the authorities to take action.
Chris Stevens.
Mr Deputy Speaker, so is the Home Secretary then acknowledging
that there are human beings at the Malston Centre who are being unlawfully detained for long periods? And if so, what assessment has our department provided to her on the prospects of someone issuing a legal challenge against our department for this unlawful detention?
Right.
Well, I'm very clear that we have too many people at Malston as of today, as we have done for some time now, and that's why we're taking urgent steps to remedy the problem.
Aaron Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary is absolutely right that we need to break the model of the business model of the people smugglers. We need to stop the boats. Would she agree with me that the opposition's suggestion of enhancing safe and legal routes is a mirage? Because no matter how many you expand them, unless you expand them to unlimited amounts, there will still be people willing to take the journey. So the only way we can stop this is by making sure people who do take that illegal route don't get to stay in this country.
Secretary.
We have already several safe and legal routes through which people who are genuine asylum seekers can make their application. And I'm very proud, as I've set out already, of our record of welcoming people who are genuinely fleeing persecution and war and conflict and human rights violations. However, we cannot accept the situation where people are bypassing those routes, jumping the queue effectively on illegitimate bases and making fabricated claims of being victims.
Sure, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary blamed her predecessor for the crisis that she's inherited twice. And indeed, the Home Office's own impact assessment of the Nationality and Borders Bill said it risked leading more people to taking desperate routes to the UK, as we've seen. So why is she doubling down on the same approach? I have many constituents who've been waiting years for asylum decisions. What is her target for processing claims? When will she clear the backlog? And does she agree that costs to the taxpayer would be reduced by granting the right to work to those whose claims have not been processed within 6 months, as is supported on both sides of the House and overwhelmingly by the public?
Secretary.
Well, I have to disagree with him in his characterisation of what I've just said. I don't criticise my predecessor, the right honourable member for my right honourable friend, the member for Witham. She achieved a huge amount during her time as Home Secretary, passing the Nationality and Borders Act, which will take a massive step forward in dealing with problems, something he voted against. She secured the Rwanda Agreement, a landmark partnership with our friends in Rwanda to tackle for the first time and head on this problem. No, I'm very grateful for her work and her contribution.
Danny Kruger.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And of course we have moral obligations to asylum seekers. And it may well be the case that conditions at Malston are unacceptable. But what is totally unacceptable is the fact that every month thousands of young men arrive in this country from a safe third country, many of whom in fact set off from a safe third country in the form of Albania. 40,000 in this year alone. It's half the size of the British Army. I know that my right honourable friend shares the dismay that is felt on these benches at this situation, unlike the benches opposite, who seem from their questions today only concerned to advocate an open border policy and to take pot shots at a minister who uniquely is actually committed.
Please, Mr. Kruger, question.
The question is that will she assure the House that she will not be deflected from her strategy of deterring the illegal migration that we are seeing?
What a great question from my honourable friend. Thank you very much. He is absolutely right. And what's more that we are identifying with these, particularly the young single men who are coming from Albania, is that they are either part of organised criminal gangs and procuring their journey through those nefarious means, or they are coming here and partaking in criminal activity, particularly related to drugs, supply, and otherwise. In fact, a few weeks ago, I attended a raid with the National Crime Agency where they arrested a suspected Albanian people smuggler in Banbury. So this is a criminal problem. There are many people coming here with criminal intent and behaving in a criminal way. We need to stop it.
Harry.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, at the recent Conservative Party conference, the Home Secretary talked that it was her dream, indeed her obsession, to see pictures of planes taking off for Rwanda on the front page of the Telegraph. Had to be the Telegraph, of course. Yeah. Does she appreciate how offensive indeed disturbing and anti-humanitarian that statement is, particularly whenever you bear in mind the true perspective that there are over 80 million refugees and internally displaced people in the world. The UK takes proportionally less refugees than many other European countries, and the Home Office's own figures that from this year say that over 70% of asylum claims are successful, which belies all this propaganda that these are economic migrants.
Secretary.
I'll tell the honourable gentleman what I find offensive and disturbing, and it's this. It's the sight of thousands of people coming to these shores illegally without a valid asylum claim, taking advantage of our generosity, abusing our laws, being accommodated free of charge. It's unfair, it's unacceptable, and it's not right.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. So far this year, 12,000 Albanians have entered the United Kingdom through small boat crossings of the Channel. 10,000 of those are adult single males. As Commander Dan Omani told the Home Affairs Select Committee, the main driver of that activity is the strength of organised Albanian criminal gangs in the north of France and the transfer of that behaviour to the United Kingdom, together with the determination for people to work on the black market. There is no reason for these people to be here. We should follow the route of other European countries and ensure that they are returned immediately to Albania. Could I therefore ask what discussions my right honourable friend has had with her Albanian counterpart to address this very important issue?
Well, I couldn't agree with my honourable friend more. He identifies exactly the problem that we're dealing with, and it needs a multifaceted approach, deploying and operationalising our returns agreement that we have with Albania, and ensuring that we take robust action against many people who are coming here from Albania with illegitimate aims.
Ms. Lauder.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary is a security risk. She says more than once in her letter to my honourable friend, the Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, that the 19th of October was the only time she used her personal email to send Home Office documents to people outside government. Does that include other non-secure networks like messaging services? Does it include any insecure communication inside government? And does it include the time she spent in other departments, especially her tenure as Attorney General, which lasted over a year, compared with the few chaotic weeks she's been Home Secretary?
Well, I refer the honourable gentleman to my letter that I sent today. That sets out all of the details about the actions, the decisions and the rationale behind the events of the 19th of October. I've apologised for the mistake, I've taken responsibility, and that's why I resigned. But what this is all about is that the honourable gentleman's party really has no solution to the problem that we're dealing with. If Labour were in charge, they would be allowing all the Albanian criminals to come to this country. They would be allowing all the small boats to come to the UK. They would open our borders and totally undermine the trust of the British people in controlling our sovereignty.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can the Home Secretary tell me how many places and alternative accommodation did she approve during the month of September? When was the first of those places signed off? When was the first person able to be housed in that accommodation signed off? And if she doesn't have those figures to hand, would she agree to write to me with it at the earliest opportunity?
I won't bore the Chamber with repeating the answer to that question that I've been asked on several occasions now. He will be able to check the record for the specific figures of the number of hotels procured during my tenure and the number of beds. And I'm very glad that we've taken urgent action to deal with this issue.
One moment. I'd like to thank the Home Secretary for her statement and answering questions for 18 minutes short of 2 hours. Point of order, Lisa Nandy.